Hello, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you today to Susan G. Komen's virtual MBC Impact Series event. I'm Natasha Majay with Susan G. Komen's Community Education and Outreach team. The programming for this series is envisioned as a year-long conversation with attendees presenting new information and speakers each month. This webinar will provide those living with MBC and their caregivers an opportunity to ask questions related to clinical trials. Our featured speaker addressing questions is Dr. Mariana Chavez McGregor, Komen Scholar from MD Anderson Cancer Center. Our moderator today is Tamika Bryant, Komen Scholar and Komen Advocate in Science. Please remember, our speakers are not able to provide individual medical advice, so do your best to keep questions as general as possible. Before we begin, Komen would like to thank our sponsors for supporting the 2022 MBC Impact Series. Thank you to AstraZeneca for being the technology sponsor for this year's event series. This virtual setting means that MBC patients, no matter where they live, can be a part of this community. We would also like to thank our premier sponsor, Amgen, and our signature sponsors, Walgreens, DSI, and Sanofi. This series is made possible because of the generosity of these sponsors. One more housekeeping note. While our sponsors are talking, please feel free to post your questions in the Q&A feature in Zoom, and we will try to get as many of them as we can. You can also, this is also being simulcast on Facebook Live, and you can post your questions in the chat there as well. Toward the end of our programming, a survey link will be placed in the chat. Your feedback is very important to us and is helpful for future MBC program planning. And by completing the survey, you'll be entered into a drawing to win an Amazon gift card. Now, we are excited you are all joining us today for our discussion. I would like to introduce you to Tamika Bryant, Komen Scholar, and Komen Advocate in Science, who will moderate today's programming. Tamika Bryant departed the pharmaceutical industry as a biochemist in 2000 to pursue life outside of the lab. Becoming a social media influencer and a trained scientist provided an enormous opportunity to speak on behalf of patients once she was diagnosed with triple-negative breast cancer in 2013. The experience as a scientist and communicator created a unique scenario where it was easier to accept and digest treatment. Refusing to allow cancer to create limitations, Tamika has become a strong advocate for women diagnosed with cancer. Tamika serves as a consumer reviewer for the Department of Defense's Breast Cancer Research Program, Pennsylvania Research Grant Peer Review, Komen Advocacy Advisory Task Force, Advocates in Science Communications Committee, Pennsylvania Public Policy and Advocacy Committee, and is a project lead graduate. Tamika is a co-founder of Black Women's Cancer Collaborative and is currently collaborating as an advocate on several breast cancer research projects. We'd like to welcome Tamika. Tamika, the floor is yours.
Wonderful. Thank you for that amazing introduction. And I'm so excited to be here to participate in something that, as you already stated, I am extremely passionate about. Clinical trials is something that I talk about as often as I physically can. I believe that clinical trials save lives, and it's so important that we are part of the process. So I'd like to introduce my co-host with me today. Her name is Dr. Mariana Chavez McGregor. She is a tenured associate professor in the Health Sciences Research Department and holds a joint appointment in the Breast Cancer Medical Oncology Department at the University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. She is a breast medical oncologist committed to improving the outcomes of patients while preserving their quality of life and providing evidence-based, research-driven, compassionate care. Her research interests focus on outcomes and disparities in research, evaluating patterns of care and understanding the long-term effects of therapy. Her work expands to areas to cost, treatment-related complications, and cancer delivery, particularly among minorities and underrepresented populations. She has an extensive experience using large databases and population registries to answer clinically relevant questions. Some of her work has helped to better characterize the impact of treatment delays and identify populations at risk of experiencing treatment delays. In addition, her work is helping to identify patients at higher risk of developing treatment-related complications. Dr. Chavez McGregor's Komen-funded research is focusing on understanding factors that influence treatment initiation and treatment completion that are associated with adverse outcomes by assessing the impact and risk factors that delay cancer delivery and developing a navigation intervention for underserved patients. Welcome, Dr. Chavez McGregor. Thank you for being here and sharing your knowledge with us today.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you all for giving us part of your day to talk a little bit about clinical trials and metastatic breast cancer.
Yes, absolutely. So I feel like we should get started. Let's remind everyone what our topic is: clinical trials for those living with MBC. So let's get started. What do you think are the pros and cons of participating in a clinical trial?
Well, I think this is a very important question because we always have to balance pros and cons. Talking about the benefits of clinical trials, I think, as you said initially, clinical trials help us advance science. We are where we are thanks to all the effort and work and willingness to participate of many, many other patients. So it helps us move the field forward. At the individual level, I think there's a lot of benefits. One is that we can have access or provide access to our patients to newer and novel therapies that otherwise we could not offer them, meaning these are new drugs, new combinations, new indications for other drugs that otherwise we cannot provide. So we're giving more options. And I always like to tell my patients, we need to have more options. The more options we have, the better. So clinical trials are more options, are more tools that we can use. I think another advantage is that, all these trials are based on a lot of very strong scientific research. For trials across the country, there are a number of different scientists, multidisciplinary teams that are working on the development of these trials, these concepts. So there's a lot of science behind them. And that's, of course, something that our patients can benefit from. And I think those are, great pros. Often, depending on the site, there is additional supervision for patients that participate in clinical trials. There's additional members of the team. For example, at MD Anderson, there are research nurses or research coordinators. So in addition of my team, there's this additional clinical trial team that will help coordinate visits, answer questions, move schedules depending on the requirements of the clinical trial. Almost like a bit of a navigator, like a different person to contact that I think it can be helpful. Depending on the clinical trial, again, this is very variable, but some clinical trials might offer reimbursement for certain expenses, for example, parking, little lunch vouchers, like little things that will help to afford the expenses associated with it. But I will say number one benefit is to have access to therapy that otherwise we cannot give our patients access to. I think that's crucial. Now, in terms of the downsides, I think there are some that need to be considered. And some of those relate to time. Often, not necessarily all the time, but sometimes clinical trials might be associated with additional visits or with a more tight schedule for scans. They are a little bit less flexible in that regard, meaning I might decide to do scans in a patient of mine every 3 months, and 1 week more, 1 week less, it's not necessarily a problem. But in the clinical trial, we have to follow the rules. We have to be very strict to follow the parameters of the trial. So there might be additional visits or intense blood testing, or even additional blood testing that it's required to fully understand the effect of these drugs in an individual. Quite often, this is very important. Clinical trials ask for patients to have biopsies. While this might not be mandatory in many cases, it can be bothersome for some, but it has a very strong scientific rationale, and the data that information will bring the investigators will be very important. But of course, a biopsy can be uncomfortable, can be painful at times, and those are things to really consider. As you'll probably know, clinical trials, in order to get into a clinical trial, of course, we need to get insurance approval, and that, sometimes can be a bit time consuming. It has to be taken into consideration. And there are very strict criteria to get into a clinical trial. We call those inclusion criteria or exclusion criteria, meaning what factors or what characteristics an individual needs to have to be allow in the trial. And sometimes that's a bit of an inconvenience, right? That those inclusion lists and that checklist can be a bit long, but it's important. There's science behind it, and it helps us to have homogeneous patient populations. I think those are some of the main cons. Of course, there's uncertainties, and uncertainties are challenging to navigate. Of course, there's always uncertainties, even in treatments that have demonstrated efficacy and safety in large clinical trials. There's always uncertainty, and at the individual level, we as providers can never specify and be quite clear about what's the benefit that treatment is going to have on an individual until we try it. But clinical trials are, of course, associated with that uncertainty. If there are drugs that are first in humans, sometimes, of course, there's uncertainty. But there's, again, big teams looking, intervening early if there's side effects. But I will think these are some of the main pros and cons for clinical trials.
Absolutely. And I think that you raised a really great point. And I think when I posed this question to you, in my mind, I'm kind of like, well, what would really be a con? And some of the ones that you presented are absolutely cons, but when you think about it in the long run, it really could be a pro. So because with me, I was diagnosed triple negative breast cancer, and of course, when people heard triple negative, they're like, oh, you're clear. And I'm like, no, I'm not. And, and then you go in and they're telling you all these things. Oh, this is the worst cancer you can have. There's nothing for this. There's nothing for that. So I am so excited, as I stated it, in my bio, I do a lot of grant reviews. So I love that now it seems like 70% of the reviews that I've been doing are about triple negative. So let's talk about some of these promising clinical trials that are happening that are just awaiting FDA approval for triple negative and low HER2 expression.
Well, I'm assuming you are talking about the Destiny Breast 04 clinical trial in specific. So I think for all of you, just to give you a little bit of background, as you know, when we treat breast cancer, we have to think, of course, about the individual, but we have to understand the biology of the tumor, and we have categorize historically breast cancer in different buckets, and we treat them accordingly, meaning I have a different toolbox to treat patients with metastatic, hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative breast cancer, another set of tools for patients that are HER2 positive tumor, and a different set of tools for patients with triple negative breast cancer. There's been advantages across all the subgroups, improvements in overall survival, new drugs. The last 10 years that I've been faculty, the number of drugs that we have access to has, almost doubled. So it's incredible. But of course, there's some areas that we consider of greater need historically. And if you look just as, at our cancer registries, triple negative breast cancer patients tend to have the worst outcomes. And there's a lot of interest in developing novel drugs in this area. So, for example, now we have access to immunotherapy for some patients that belong to the triple negative subgroup. Now, what I think you're referring is to some very, very new, exciting results that have been recently presented and published that actually not only bring new options to the table, but also are making us rethink this categorization of breast cancer. So this is the results of a trial that is called Destiny Breast 04. It was presented at the plenary session at the ASCO meeting, that as most of you may know, it's the largest cancer meeting in the world, the meeting from the American Society of Clinical Oncology, taking place at the beginning of June every year in Chicago. And this trial, what evaluated was a drug that it's called trastuzumab deruxtecan. This drug is a drug that we have available for treatment of patients with HER2 positive tumors. It was approved about 2 years ago. And what this trial did was evaluate this drug in a new group of patients, patients that have what now we consider HER2 low, meaning traditionally they're HER2 negative, but there's a little bit of HER2. So in the testing that we do, they are categorized as 1 or 2. Compared to 0 or 3, right? So that kind of intermediate group. And these patients that have previously been treated with chemotherapy, and if they express hormone receptors previously received endocrine therapy, they were randomized, meaning half of them got one treatment, half of them got the other. So half the patients got randomized to receive this drug, the trastuzumab deruxtecan, while the other half got chemotherapy that their doctor chose. So I could have chosen one chemo or the other. All of that was allowed to by the study. And what we learned is that for the entire group of patients, there were over 550, the drug, this new drug, trastuzumab deruxtecan, prolonged the time to progression, meaning help us have longer control of the disease, and also help our patients live longer, an average of about 6 months. When the investigators look at the different characteristics of the patients, the majority of them had hormone receptor positive tumors, and there's a very important benefit, but the benefit was also seen in the smaller group of patients that had hormone receptor negative, I guess previously would have belonged to this triple negative breast cancer category that we think about. So a drug that now we can think about using in patients that meet the criteria for the trial. So I think it's something that clearly it's going to change standard of care. And if we talk about benefits, right, the patients that participated in those trials received it before anybody else, and
Right.
received the benefit from that early intervention. Probably these are patients that received this drug about 1.5 years ago, and I think that's incredible. They were very brave. They took the chances. They took the uncertainty, and now are helping all of us to have more drugs for patients.
Absolutely. And I think that's something we should definitely mention and discuss, just how brave you are when you decide to step into these trials, hoping for a positive outcome, and just the joy you feel knowing that you've made a difference. And maybe even if right now it does not save you, it may save thousands of people down the line. So I think that's something that we should always be mindful of. But my next question to you is, when should I consider enrolling in a clinical trial?
Anytime. Right? Anytime. I think that one of the greatest misconceptions about clinical trials is that you choose a clinical trial when there's no more options,
Yes.
right? I
Yes.
think that needs to be told that is not true. A clinical trial can be indicated at any point throughout a cancer journey. And that starts from diagnosis and it goes to end of life, meaning there's clinical trials that are testing new types of mammograms. I mean, this goes all along the cancer journey. But the answer, to be very clear, it's at any point. In metastatic breast cancer, we have had patients that received treatment on their clinical trial as their first treatment. Let's just think about the new drugs that now are standard of care for the treatment of patients with metastatic breast cancer, hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative, the CDK inhibitors, palbociclib, ribociclib, and abemaciclib. These drugs change the standard of care. And now we know that we use them as first line. Well, there were patients that at some point in their first treatment decided to participate in this study. So it can always be part of the treatment. It can always be part of the treatment, not for the cancer treatment, but for the symptoms. We have clinical trials to test exercise versus not, to test better nutrition versus not, to test, yoga, to test, mindful techniques to decrease anxiety. So there's a lot of clinical trials that you can always participate. And then if one doesn't work, and there's need to change another treatment, there's always the possibility to participate in a clinical trial over and over again. What I explain to my patients, and I like to treat patients with metastatic breast cancer. I feel very privileged that they let me walk that journey with them. And when we talk about how things are going to look like, there's a lot of uncertainties, but we talk about this idea of using one treatment for as long as it works, and then the other, and then the other. So I tell them that it's like I'm a plumber with a belt full of tools, right? They laugh at me because I'm always wearing high heels, or you don't look like a plumber. So, well, it's the same principle. I have a belt full of tools. My job is to find, based on who the patient is, what are their preference, et cetera, my job is to find what I think is the best tool, right? And I'm going to use that tool for as long as it works. And it can work for a short period of time, or it may work for a very long period of time. But when that tool is not working, I have to use another one. And I'm going to reach out of my belt and find another one and another one. Well, using that analogy, a clinical trial, it's a tool that I don't have on my belt, that somebody else has to let me borrow, meaning you cannot find it at Home Depot or Lowe's or whatever. So it gives me another tool. And sometimes it helps me actually save the tools that otherwise I already have on my belt. So it gives us more tools. And every time I have to make a treatment decision with my patient and her, family or loved ones, we discuss whether there's a clinical trial available or not, or at least available in my side, or if there might be another at a different place. Because going back, and I may have missed this when we were talking about the cons of clinical trials, I think something to consider is that the clinical trial has to usually take place at certain institutions. So for some patients, there might be some travel associated with it. So I have patients that might be coming for clinical trials to Texas from other states. So that can be a bit of a travel inconvenience. But yeah, it gives us that option to emphasize the short answer. I give you a long one, but the short answer to your question is, I think clinical trial, it's always an option. And every time there's a treatment decision, it's worth revisiting, these issues. There clinical trial, yes, no, why not, what are the advantages, et cetera, and then make the best decision.
I absolutely love that answer. And as I talk to people that are newly diagnosed, or people, kind of in the midst of their journey, that is the first thing that I ask them. Have you asked about clinical trials? And oftentimes people shy away from it because they do think it is about end of life. And I say, no, there are clinical trials for a number of things. And it's important that we get involved in the process. One, I always love that extra care, but two, just so that we can feel like we are part of the journey and moving this cancer eradication forward. So my next question for you is, where can someone find the right clinical trial?
Well, there's a lot of information. It can be hard to navigate. Of course, always good to talk to your doctor. It's very important, I think, to have a good understanding of your disease. Because, for example, I have patients that want to, take certain drugs for other cancers that are not really making, there's really not that type of drug evaluated in breast cancer, et cetera. So talking to your doctor, understanding your disease, it's very important. And then looking for this information. Susan G. Komen has an important website where there's information available regarding clinical trials. So look in the website, ask questions. It's actually a user-friendly engine. And then, of course, there's clinicaltrials.gov. So every single clinical trial, it's registered in this database that it's managed by the National Cancer Institute. So the only thing is that you have to be kind of savvy looking at this, like database, because if you just type breast cancer, there's literally going to be millions of clinical trials. So it's going to be from screening to treatment, surgery, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to be, kind of like having some time to get familiar to the site and understanding, you want a clinical trial for breast cancer in the metastatic setting in patients that have tumors that are HER2 positive, with brain metastases, for example. You can be very, very specific. The specific website, it's clinicaltrials.gov, G-O-V. And for Komen, it's clinicaltrials.komen.org. So very easy, just, think about clinical trials, look for it. You will see in many of this, the eligibility criteria. So you can, kind of see whether you think you fit or not, some information about the drugs, the schedule, in clinical trials that are open in different places around the country. You will see the places and you will see contact numbers. Now, of course, the ultimate decision to see if you fulfill the criteria and if it's a good clinical trial, I think requires conversation with your treating physician, because while clinical trials are always good, we also need to do the best we can to match the right clinical trial to the right patient, right? We still want what's best for patients. So there still has to be that match.
Absolutely. So for those of you who are watching, in the chat, they have shared the websites. If you did not get them, it's clinicaltrials.gov. But I highly suggest you first check clinicaltrials.komen.org. It's very user-friendly, and I don't think it will be as overwhelming. So next question I have for you is, why do you think it is important for women of color to join these trials?
Well, as I said, I think it's important for everybody to join, but you touch on a very important point. We know that there is a lack of representation of minorities in clinical trials. If we think about the population affected for breast cancer, we would like to have the same representation in clinical trials. So that way we can generalize, right? We see the same with African Americans mainly, but also Hispanics and with elderly patients. And how are we going to know if these treatments have the same efficacy and the same side effects in all the patients if we don't have representation of everybody in the clinical trial? So we need all patients to be part of clinical trials so we can really understand the use of these drugs. And again, not only the benefits for the toxicities, the tolerance, the doses in absolutely everybody. So this is an invitation for all of you in the audience that are concerned to really think about clinical trials like an additional option in the toolkit that your doctor is going to have for you. There's science behind it. There'll be teams supporting you throughout, and we need everybody. Not only can benefit you, but as we said initially, can benefit others, can benefit our knowledge, and having a more inclusive participation can help us develop better treatments. The thing with science and with clinical trials is that these are stairs and we always only go up. There's no going down. Even when a clinical trial, it's negative, even if it fails, it's still bringing additional information. We're still learning from it. We're still using those specimens, that sample, to keep adding. And through this, somebody's going to come and have a greater idea. So it's always, think about it. There's stairs that are only having one direction. We're only, going up. We want to go much higher. But all of that information, it's really going to help us. And if we have equal representation, will be very important. And also, I think talking about equity and we need to make sure that all patients have access. Rural patients, urban patients, some of these trials are centralized in big cancer centers and in big cities, but we also need to give access to patients that live far away. So yeah, I'm very passionate about this as well, giving access to everybody. I think something that we have to do is participate in this type of forums, provide education, hear your fears, hear those, misconceptions. I think historically, we know that there are a lot of aspects or factors that helps us understand some historical reluctancy from Black groups to participate, and that, rightfully so, based on the way that research was conducted,
Absolutely.
many years ago. But things are very different now, and there's a lot of people, organizations that we're advocating for helping all our patients and giving everybody the access to the best treatments.
Yes, absolutely. And I always tell people we can't negate what happened in the past, and we absolutely should know and talk about it, but we also have to learn from what happened in order for us to move forward, which is why I'm always telling African-American women, women of color, persons of color, just the importance of having their genes, genetic makeup, be a part of that history and moving forward. And I love the reference of the steps, right? Because oftentimes people have this perception that, oh my God, my trial didn't work, so I failed, and now I'm going back to zero. And I'm always like, well, there really is no zero. Now you're going to 2. If you were at 1, now you're going to 2, because maybe at 1 it stalled, but someone else can pick that up and figure out how to move it forward. So my next thing I want to talk to you about is, we all know that everyone seems to go to Dr. Google when we're looking for things, right? So there are plenty of options. If we type in, find clinical trial for breast cancer, some of them are sponsored ads. Are there any options that we should avoid when we do this?
And I think there's a lot of information we should avoid from Google. It's hard to just, come off of a list and I avoid all of this because there's a lot of misinformation. I really think that if you want to find a very specific answer in Google, you will find it, right? Like including somebody tell you, don't get treated for a breast cancer, right? So you will find that. I think it's important to stick to sites like we said, the clinicaltrials.komen.org, because there's been, there's people that care about you. There's people that know about cancer that are putting these things together. They're making it easily to understand. There's nobody gets paid anything for you to enroll in any of these trials. It's conflict free. It's just about science. Clinicaltrials.gov, as I said, it's a bit more confusing, but it's not sponsored. The American Society of Clinical Oncology has information about cancer, the American Cancer Society. I will really invite our audience to use resources that come from your institution where you're treated, from your physician, and one of my favorites, it's really the Komen website. There's information about treatments, how to live with cancer, talking about nutrition, talking about rest. Talking about all those things that are important to discuss. But I will invite our audience to be careful in terms of what they look at. Even if you look at scientific websites, a lot of our articles are published under a platform that we call PubMed, right? So if you go to PubMed and you just start typing, terms, you'll find some of the newest research. And even if somebody can understand a lot of what's said, that doesn't necessarily apply to a patient. The number of times that I've heard from patients of mine about a new compound that in cancer cell lines or in like little mouse show improvement that they wanted. There's unfortunately a process and a long time between those interesting observations and, a drug being ready for us to prescribe it or to enroll in clinical trials of patients. So even if you're looking at sites that are scientific and that publish peer-reviewed research, it might need a little bit more of interpretation. So I will really invite to be cautious when looking information. Education is important, information is important, but we need to be thoughtful about, where we find it. And
Absolutely.
again, the Komen website, I think it's a tool that you all should explore. And I'm pretty sure about this, but maybe they can correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's even information in Spanish. So you can even, have access if English is not your main language. So I think that's a good place to go.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, because we all know just the misinformation that just exists in general. And so this site is broken down in a way that everybody can understand it. And in the event that you are having trouble navigating it, there's also an 800 number that you can call and someone will guide you through the process. So I always tell people it's a great place to start. And then when you find something, maybe you take it into your doctor and you guys have a discussion about what works and how you can move forward. And so my next question, and I believe we're probably almost done with our time, is who chooses which treatment that you have?
So I will say that we choose it together. I see my job as offering the best treatment that I think it's appropriate for a patient, but ultimately the patient's the one that's going to decide. So the patient may also rely on friends and family. But I think, ideally, this has to be a shared decision process, right? Sometimes we don't know if treatment A or B, it's different. And I have a patient that lives very far away and she rather gets a treatment that requires infusions every 3 weeks rather than 1 week. But if she doesn't tell me that, I wouldn't know, right? Or I have patients that are retired musicians, but for them, playing the piano or the violin, it's very important. So I need to try to avoid drugs that are going to cause, numbness and tingling, neuropathy. So I think it has to be a shared decision-making process where we as providers need to understand the priorities, the person that it's in front of us, and of course we want to use our medical knowledge, and ultimately I think that the decision to say yes or no, of course I think ultimately it's the patient, but ideally it has to be a decision that it's well informed, and it's depending on us providing the right information, rationale, side effects, etc., so they feel comfortable making the right decision.
Love that answer, because I absolutely agree that it has to be a partnership. We have to build trust, camaraderie with one another, so that I can say to you, well, maybe I don't want to do this treatment because, I need to play the violin, I need to play the piano, or this is important to my life. So I think that it is so important that we make certain that when we go in this journey, that we partner up, we share, and of course, we always have to advocate for ourselves. But I think that is our time. This was absolutely amazing. Thank you for joining us. Natasha, I'm going to pass this right on back to you.
Wonderful. Thank you both so much. We are so excited to have you both with us. And we are excited to the audience that you could join us today for this important event. We want to express our gratitude to our speakers today, Komen Scholar Dr. Mariana Chavez McGregor, and our moderator, Komen Scholar and Komen Advocate in Science, Tamika Bryant. Today's session was recorded and will be posted on our landing page soon. So you can log in and rewatch this session or view previous sessions you may have missed. Please help us spread the word about this important content with your friends, family, and healthcare professionals you think may be interested. Once again, we want to acknowledge our sponsors of the 2022 MBC Impact Series. Their generous support allows us to continue to bring this community together to share important information, resources, and experiences. A very special thank you to AstraZeneca for being the technology sponsor for this year's series. And we would also like to thank our premier sponsor, Amgen, and our signature sponsors, Walgreens, Sanofi, and DSI. This series is made possible because of the generosity of these sponsors. Please also help us by completing a survey, which you can find in the chat feature of the platform. Your feedback is important to us and helpful for future MBC program planning. And by completing the survey, you will be entered into a drawing to win an Amazon gift card Finally, the next event in the MBC Impact Series will be Monday, June 27th. The focus of the conversation will be bone metastasis and potential treatments. We look forward to having you log in and join in the conversation. Thank you again for joining us today, and thanks to all who made this event possible. Stay safe and stay connected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.